Off the coast of Scotland sits Alien Moor, one of the Flannan Isles in the Outer Hebrides. In 1895, a 23-meter lighthouse began construction, pieced together slowly by supplies hauled from boats and up a grueling cliff. On the 7th of December, 1899, the beacon was lit, and it was given a 3-man crew of Thomas Marshall, James Duckett, and Donald MacArthur, as well as a 4th man that kept an eye on the shore. Nobody knows who this man was, as his name is not listed in the Wikipedia article. Exactly 1 year later, a steamer called the Arctur was traveling from Philadelphia to Leith, and in a spot of poor weather, passed by the Flannan Isles Lighthouse to see that it was not operational. And as a result, the Arctur was run aground on Carpy Rock. The ship's master, Captain Holman, too busy dealing with the damage brought to his vessel, failed to mention the lighthouse being unlit upon his return to Scotland. A boat meant to deliver supplies to the lighthouse was forced to delay its December 20th delivery due to poor weather conditions, and didn't make its way to the lighthouse until Boxing Day. When the relief vessel captain, Jim Harvey, came ashore, he was not greeted by the keepers as was the routine. A search of the lighthouse concluded that the crew had vanished, the lighthouse was empty, the clocks had stopped, and no sign of distress save for an overturned chair in the kitchen. Jim blew his whistle and set off a distress flare, and still no response. Disheartened, Harvey returned to the shore station at Breesclete, where he sent a telegram to the Northern Lighthouse Board.
A dreadful accident has happened at Flannan's. The 3 keepers, Duckett, Marshall and the Occasional, have disappeared from the island. On our arrival there this afternoon, no sign of life was to be seen on the island. Fired the rocket, but as no response was made, managed to land Moore, who went up to the station but found no keepers there. The clocks were stopped, and other signs indicated that the accident must have happened about a week ago. Poor fellows. They must have been blown over the cliffs or drowned trying to secure a crane or something like that. Night coming on. We could not wait to make something as to their fate. Master, Hesperus.
To this day, nobody has a definitive theory as to the fates of the Flannan Isle lighthouse keepers. Sure, they have tossed around ideas about an intense storm that washed them off the rocks as they struggled to secure equipment that they had previously been reprimanded for neglecting to do, and it's realistically the most probable circumstance, but it still leaves us with unanswered questions. What happened to that dining room chair? Who or what was responsible for knocking it over and neglecting to pick it back up? I have my own theories. Would you like to hear them? Here's one. My theory is, psych. You can't handle my theories, motherfucker! The enigma of the crew's disappearance has confounded many and inspired artists, from poets to screenwriters, to weigh in on the mystery, most notably a poem by Wilfred Wilson Gibson. The supposed death of these men was taken from a tragic display of nature's indifference to a paranormal musing. Though 3 men dwell on Flannan Isle to keep... Fuck, this is so long! Look, you can read this on your own time. This poem caught the attention of indie game developer come ghost hunter Jonathan Boakes, a one-man studio responsible for many adventure games filled with haunted seaside towns and plucky ghost hunters. 2004's Lights Out is an indirect sequel to 2002's Darkfall, with only ancillary references to characters from the previous game. Where that one was a thoughtful meditation on a haunted hotel and the many lives it housed, Lights Out takes a much more straightforward attempt at expanding on the mystery of Flannan Isle. But again, nobody really knows what happened. Oceanic Airlines, how can I help you?
I have information. Information you might find curious.
Oh, okay. Does this have anything to do with my father? Last I heard, he was...
The information concerns a certain lighthouse and the fate of a certain crew in that lighthouse.
So it's that Flannan place, the thing I'm talking about right now?
Yeah?
So what is it?
You're not, creeped out?
I'm rigid with unease, I assure you.
I don't believe you.
Don't believe what?
I don't think you're creeped out at all.
Look, I said I was creeped out. Now, are you going to tell me what you know?
I don't know.
Come on. Look, I'm really weirded out.
Promise?
Hand to goss.
Okay, well, apparently, a source of the lighthouse was informed that on the Isle of...
The original Darkfall was a simple and not wholly fascinating story that was enriched by its unsettling atmosphere and the care put into its setting. It's a ghost story inspired by real experiences. I like that game a lot. It functions more as a tapestry of stories that you pore over, and less like a linear narrative. Lights Out is odd in that it's simultaneously much more ambitious in the story department, but also lazy in its presentation of that story. It opens in 1912 in Cornwall. A cartographer named Benjamin Parker is hired to map the coast around Trewartha. I have no idea if I pronounced that correctly, as the only reference was a robot voice saying it. During which he notices a lighthouse that is not documented on any maps. Shortly after this, he has dreams about a flying metallic object. When he asks his employer Robert Demarion about it, he learns that the island is called Fetch Rock, and that a passing ship found the lighthouse had gone dark. Concerned for the crew, he asks Parker to investigate. Parker arrives to find the lighthouse sans crew, but this time he is greeted by the disembodied voice of one of the keepers named Shaw. Based on what information Shaw gives you, and some unsent letters found in the crew's quarters, we learned about a man named Drake, who was suspected of being possessed by a demon. Shaw and another keeper named Wolf witnessed his body become enveloped in a blinding light, and overheard him whispering the name Malachi. The two planned to leave the island, but their plans were foiled by Drake. Parker finds Drake's diary and learns that Drake had similar dreams of UFOs. This is where things deviate wildly from protocol. Parker finds a cave on the island, and after walking through it, he emerges from the cave 92 years later in 2004, where the lighthouse has become an abandoned tourist trap. The base of the lighthouse turned into a visitor center with familiar objects placed in glass cases and cheesy reenactment exhibits. Apparently, history chose to blame Parker for the crew's disappearance. Parker jumps from the lighthouse in 1912 to 2004 and eventually 2090, as well as a prehistoric timeline, in an attempt to correct the course of history and save the crew from a malevolent force as well as clear his name. The plot seems like it's split between Boakes' desire to write the ghost stories he so appreciates and the disruptive science fiction elements interwoven throughout. This split, while introducing some fun things like time travel and weird anachronistic visuals, works to, I feel, dispel a lot of the tension or horror that was present in the original. It also doesn't help that, although the plot seems really involved and intricate, it somehow manages to fall completely to the background while you're reading about birds or looking over someone's space diary. It's the most understated story about time travel and ghosts and demons and shit. It doesn't help that Parker doesn't speak even when confronted by Polly, a ghost hunter that believes she is the reincarnated spirit of Wolf. She hides in a closet while talking to him, and he doesn't say anything. Like, why wouldn't you clue her into what's happening? She knows who you are. Your goddamn picture's on the wall, and it says you're a murderer.
Do you want to do the same thing to me as you did to James and Shaw and Drake?
This is where you say no. To be fair, I'm playing the director's cut, which omits a segment where you can communicate with her by knocking on the door for yes or no. But even that's like, you're not a ghost. You can use your fucking words. Look, this is a bigger issue in gaming that I don't care to weigh in on. Anyway, Lighthouse. Game's called Lights Out. I'm an idiot, guys. I'm a dummy. Lights Out brings some really entertaining ideas to an adventure game, and like other Darkling Room games, I can see that clearly a great deal of research and influences were funneled into this project. Boakes even took the time to include PDFs with the island's history, as well as assorted literature concerning the mystery, but in comparison to Darkfall, these things feel like they don't serve a purpose. For example, at several moments, the poem Antigonish by William Hughes Mearns is quoted, but for seemingly no other reason than it sounds unsettling. But why are the characters saying it?
As I was going up the stairs, I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. I wish that man would stay away.
Alright, look, it's a miracle that we're even talking right now. I mean, I don't even know where you are. We are communicating beyond the veil of both reality and time. And you might have one opportunity to talk to me and you choose to recite poetry to me. I don't get why you're saying it. There's so many more helpful things you could communicate to me right now, but you're reciting poetry. And why that poem? I mean, I get like stairs and lighthouse stairs and you know, there's a ghost on the stairs. You're on the stairs. I'm on the stairs too. We're all on the stairs. I get that. I get why it's appropriate. I don't get why you're saying it though.
I'm trying to wrap my head around it, and I'm coming up with nothing.
Lights Out is pretty standard fare for point-and-click games.
No.
Like, I'm sorry to go back on this, but why were you saying that? Like, I still don't get it. I'm not getting over it.
Time isn't a straight line.
If there is any difficulty or confusion that arises out of that, it would be because of the occasionally obtuse design of the environment. It's easy to pass over not only items that are difficult to see, but whole directions of movement, because they are simply too easy to miss. In this sense, the game is less about your puzzle-solving skills and more about your attention to detail. You really need to be observant and take note of things that may be important later, most likely so you can figure out some kind of lock combination. And it's up to you to discern what exactly is a clue, as there is no shortage of assorted junk you can just pick up and take a look at, just for the sake of it. It was an occasional source of frustration when I would be relieved that I found something I could interact with after being at a loss for ages, only to find out that the cup I picked up was just a dang old cup. Once you reach 2004, you'll find Polly's experimental ghost hunting goggles that, when prompted, display hidden clues. These also help you find the different ways you can jump through time. Lights Out begins to open up a little bit more at this point and becomes much less linear. You're given free roam to wander around and move back and forth in time as needed. You'll come across a lot of reading material, and some of it's interesting, but a lot of it is really schlocky in that something scary is happening to me, but why am I still writing about it kind of way. It's just a little too convenient to the point of being ineffective. There are a few opportunities where you can exchange dialogue with people, but there is a specific pattern of responses you need to say in order to get anything helpful out of them. And since you can retry this infinitely, it's just a matter of trial and error. In terms of sheer exploration and adventuring, there is fun to be had in this game. It's cool having to hop through time to put out fires in one timeline with something from another timeline, and I was genuinely committed to figuring out just what had happened at this lighthouse. But not a lot was done to spur that curiosity. It's more likely that I just have bad taste and am easily excitable. Though a point of contention for many critics, I think Lights Out looks fine. Well, acceptable. I will admit that its ambitious story requires some ambitious visuals that sometimes exceed their grasp. This is especially true of the futuristic areas of the game, which look like a screensaver from the 90s. But for the most part, the abundant detail and care put into other environments makes up for the simplicity of models and textures. The original Darkfall avoided the difficulties of character animation and lip syncing by omitting characters entirely, and thankfully to great lonesome effect. Lights Out has characters but finds odd little ways of keeping them off screen. It certainly looks primitive even for its time, but I know what everything is, and it's in no way an impediment to my experience with the game. The strongest part of Darkfall 1 was its atmosphere, its use of sound and music to bring tension, unease, and frankly, character to a realistic and creepy building. This game, however, does not really allow much room for a focus on one environment. The opening scene in the town is very in keeping with the tone established in Boke's other games like The Lost Crown, and that sort of set me up for disappointment because this aesthetic is not followed through with. Both games are very short of music, and this one is nearly entirely dependent on droning ambient tracks, which I think was a good call, because there's already so much working against this game's horror elements that music might have made this game's vibe all the more innocuous. Voice acting might be my biggest concern. Although it's really commendable that this game was essentially created from the ground up by one person, it's hard to look past the fact that there is only one person's voice in this entire game. And he's not just one character. Boke's voices everyone, with the exception of Polly and some kids on a voicemail.
I have a job for you, a job of the utmost urgency. Will you accept it? Do you see him, Robert? Do you see him? There's a man. I can see him.
Bring James home, I said. That lighthouse is cursed.
No one understands me.
You may have tried.
The Drake creature.
He's written himself a lot of work that I'm not sure he's capable of making sound organic in his own story. It's great that he went for it, and I would hate to discourage somebody from that, but you've done enough. Couldn't you just call in some favors or pay someone on the internet, if only for the purpose of distinguishing character voices? The spooky demon voices are a little less alarming when I know it's him putting on a spooky voice with reverb. Departure-related occupations and practices, how may I help you?
I know where
Sir, I think there's a problem with your connection or something.
In the desert, I saw a creature, naked, bestial, who, squatting upon the ground, held his heart in his hands.
What is that, Stephen Crane? Get the fuck out of here. Darkfall 2 Lights Out is a passable adventure game that does not live up to the Darkfall name. Both its predecessor and its successor are far more competent and enjoyable ghost stories. This game serves as a tangential experiment that exists in the same shared world, but is not representative of how great a Darkling Room game can be. I really enjoyed the other Darkfall games, and The Lost Crown. I think this is a talented creator who, when he's firing on all cylinders, creates some great games that are full of history and atmosphere and a palpable love of the material. Interesting concepts and themes are thrown around, but ultimately I have no emotional link to this game and its silly attempts at being creepy, which confounds me because I know this creator is capable of being creepy. It provides a decent challenge at times with a few rather obtuse puzzles, and does not overstay its welcome. The lapse in graphic quality is unfortunate but not offensive, and general sound design ranges from genuinely effective to over-the-top silliness. The cover of this game recommends you prepare for what happens after Darkfall. This is true in the sense that what actually happens next is in the third Darkfall game, Lost Souls. So since this game does not concern itself with the events of Darkfall, the journal, you can sort of mentally take a knee during this one and focus on preparing for the third one, where you'll, see what happens after. What the fuck am I saying?